Why are doors so complicated in multiplayer games? Getting all players in the game to see the same thing when a door is opened or closed in an Unreal Engine 5 project is quite the process. So let's get right into part 3 of how I was able to get the result you're seeing right now. And then we'll scroll down a little bit more, and we have our on-rep new interaction key. And we will quickly paste in the same value for emplacing the new do interaction once into the actual array. And we'll also be sure to update our comment as well as throw in the remove command as well. So again, we're just matching our do interactions once logic with the already working interaction keys need key press logic. So no need to reinvent the wheel here, and we're all set with this. And now we'll have a few small things I realized we need to fix in the receiver comp when I went to test. In this first one, we need to update the receiver box to be blueprint read write and edit defaults only. So this way we can update that box extent in the blueprint. And again, you'll see how helpful that is once we get into making the actual door blueprint. So just a little small change there, no big deal. And then we have down here in the references of the receiver comp CCS, we need to delete that reference to the widget because we don't need it anymore. And this one you'll find really quickly because you won't be able to build with that in there. So we just get rid of that, no big deal. And then we'll have one last update in here where we need to get rid of this location setting of the receiver box so that this way, whatever location we set it to in blueprints, it will just stay at. So again, you'll see how important that is once we go to set up our door blueprint. And with that, we can move on from the receiver and get on to the seeker. And the first thing we're going to do is add an include for the interactable actor interface. So pretty standard stuff there. And then we'll scroll down a little bit to our attempt interaction logic. And we're going to paste in some code. And first, we're going to call our local and server versions. So again, remember we need to call both versions to make sure that we're getting that instant feedback as well as that replicated feedback through the server function. And then now that we've performed the interaction, we want to basically call that performed interaction function and then zero out the current receiver as well. Because that's what we need to do to make sure the UI updates properly and all that good stuff that we did on the receiver comp. And then that last line, we're just going to return true to let the caller know that the attempted interaction worked out as it should have. And then we're going to move down a little bit more, and we're going to completely redo our execute interaction because once this is called, we no longer just want to have a print statement. We need to actually perform the interaction. So because this is the server function, all we're going to do is call the interact function. Because remember, that one is supposed to be called only by the server. And because we're on the server RPC, we can be confident that we are the server when we're calling this function. So that's good there. And now we need to scroll down a bit to where we are evaluating whether or not things are interactable. And as you can see in the instantaneous interactable section, we want to add in logic to call that local interact function. And the reason we don't want that in the get is interactable with key press section is because we want that interaction to fire when the key is pressed, not just instantly like we do in this first section here. So pretty straightforward there. just make that update and everything will work as intended, so that's good stuff. And now last but certainly not least, we're going to move on to our door CCS itself. And there's a lot of code in here, but don't be nervous. I'm going to go line by line as always. So just copy down those forward declarations there and the include for the interactable actor. We need to put that in there as well. And as you can see in the description, we just have our standard description, and it's going to be the door for our code base here. And then we need to add in the A interactable actor because it is inheriting from that. So make sure you have all this kind of top of the header stuff in here, and then we can move on. And then we'll scroll down a little bit more and get into our default Unreal functions public. And as you can see, our constructor will just initialize tick and set our default values and create the components. And tick is going to be calling the parent's version, and then it will call our update door function, as you'll see later. And we'll be turning that on and off dynamically based on if the door should be moving or not, as you'll see. And then we'll scroll down a little bit and declare our interact and interact local functions. And unlike the actual interface in the interactable actor, these are actually going to do something on the door. So you'll see more about that when we get into the .cpp. But for now, just declare them and know that we're actually going to be opening and closing the door based on these interactions. And now we're going to scroll down and look at our server RPCs. So again, this function will be called on the server only. And we have one for locking the door and unlocking the door. And we want both of those to be reliable because we want to make sure the door lock and unlock commands actually get sent. So pretty straightforward stuff. And then we have begin play. And this is going to call the parent's version and update our interaction keys. But you'll see more of that when we get into the definition into the .cpp. And then we'll scroll down a little bit and we're going to introduce a new type of RPC. And this is net multicast. And what this means is it's literally going to be acted out on every single machine. So whether or not it's the server, it's the client, it's the owning client, we're going to be sending a message across the network to execute this function. So as you can see, we have one for open door, closed door, lock door, and unlock door. And you basically just need to know that this function means that it is going to be called on every single machine that is playing our game. So that's kind of the main concept here. And we'll put them in their own region, just like as you can see here. And now we'll move down here to our helper functions and our last multicast. So we have the net multicast unlock door, same thing as the other ones, but for unlocking the door. And then we have these helpers, which are actually going to perform the actions. And the way to think of this is that the net multicast and the server functions are all going to call these functions. So open door will be called once we've done all the checks and we realize that we actually do want to open the door on that specific machine. And the same thing is true for closed door and lock door as well. And then we'll move down and we have unlock door as well as update door rotation. So this is going to be called on tick, and this is going to be what's actually updating the rotation of the door, as you can tell by the name. And then below that, we have the static mesh components of the door and the door frame. And notice that we don't have the knob or any other cosmetic details in here, because those we can just attach in blueprints because they don't really have anything to do with the actual functionality of the door. because that's what we're focused on here. Just the functionality and all the cosmetic stuff we can do in blueprints. And we then move down here and we have the forward arrow and the door audio. And the forward arrow is just a little thing for us to see which way the door is going to open. So nothing too interesting there. And then we have the audio component, and we need this so that we can stop the sound. So say the door is opening and we're playing the open sound and we abruptly close the door. We want to stop that sound we already have playing and start the new sound. And that's why we need an audio component instead of just playing the sounds based on gameplay statics, because then we can't stop the sounds if we set it up that way. And then we're actually going to go back up to below our update door rotation and add in this get play start time function. And the reason we need that is obviously the time of our sounds is not going to perfectly match up with how long it takes for the door to open and close. So basically what this function is going to do is it's going to take in the sound. So say, for example, the door open sound, and figure out what time it needs to start playing the sound at in order to get the sound to finish playing right when the door opens. So this is just another piece of functionality I decided to put in right at the end, hence why we're a little out of sequence here, but no big deal. And then going down here into the door settings, we have our how long will the door take to open. So just open time and put in whatever you want there. And we'll snap back to the original recording. And as you can see, that open time replaced open speed, because I realized that setting an exact time that we want the door to open in is a lot more useful than this arbitrary speed value. So don't leave that in there. Just replace it with the open time. And then we have the open angle and the close angle, which you can keep as is in here. And then we have the interaction text close, interaction text open, both very self-explanatory. And then we have the 3 sound cues for open, close, and lock. And we downloaded those assets earlier, if you remember. So we'll hook those up in blueprints later on. And then we have the volume multiplier for our door sounds. So we'll make sure we have a variable for that as well. And then we'll keep going down, and our last couple of settings are the low end and high end pitch multipliers. And this, as a reminder, we have to kind of make it sound like we have more door and open sounds than we actually do, because just slightly varying the pitch will give us a very different result, and it'll just make it seem like our sound assets are better and more diverse. So that's always a good thing, and we can get that by randomly setting the pitch. And then we have our parameters. We have a tag for if the door is closing, a tag for if the door is locked, and then we have the current angle of the door, which we're going to be updating in that update door angle. And then we have the goal angle, and that obviously is what the door is moving towards. And then we just close off the region for parameters, and we can call it a day on the door ccs.h. So now let's get into the .cpp. And we'll scroll back up to the top here and make sure you add in those includes. And then in the constructor, we want to set that we can ever tick to true, and then start with tick enabled to false, because we're going to be enabling it when we are actually in the process of opening and closing the door, and otherwise we want it to be disabled. And then we have the creation and attachment of our door and door frame. And note that we want door frame to be attached to root and door to be attached to the door frame itself. And then we'll scroll down a bit and we have our forward arrow. So we're creating that, attaching it to the door frame, updating its relative location to be a little higher up. And then we're setting it to be facing forward in relation to our actor itself by default there. And then we're setting it to be hidden in the game, but we'll be able to see it when we're placing it in the map, which you'll see soon enough here. And then last but not least, we're just adding that door audio component and attaching it to the door frame. And then in the tick section, we are going to call our parents' version and then update our door rotation. And that's all we're going to have to do in tick, because again, it's going to be disabled unless the door is actively opening or closing. And this seems like a good place to call it a day for today. So if you liked the video, definitely leave the video a like and a comment to say what's up. It really helps me out in the YouTube algorithm. And subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for part 4, which will be coming out tomorrow at some point. So with all that being said, thank you so much as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.